algunos anuncios mientras acomodan el estrado.
Some housekeeping announcements for those of you who arrived late. There is internet available. The network is a conference, and the password is CReCER in caps. There is simultaneous interpretation available. The headsets are available just outside the room. And also the details of the agenda and the breakout groups during the 1.5 days of this meeting are available in the C event app. The streaming is live, and the link to the plenary sessions is also available from the CReCER 2025 site. And there is supporting staff in the room and outside to address any kind of questions or concerns that you may have.
Entonces, vamos a invitar a empezar el...
We're now going to start Plenary 1, and we're going to invite again Isam Abusliman to join us on the stage. He is the director of the World Bank for Bolivia, Ecuador, Chile, and Peru. The panelists are William Manley, chief economist for Latin America and the Caribbean of the World Bank, and Javier Davila, division head for financial management and procurement at the Inter-American Development Bank. Thank you. Before we start, we're going to answer a 3-question survey. Please take out your cell phones, and you will see on the screen the first question. In one word, what is the key challenge facing your country? Esperemos un momento.
Inseguridad, corrupción, inseguridad, transparencia. Muchas palabras que se repiten. Educación, informalidad, inseguridad, corrupción, transparencia. Corrupción, seguridad, inseguridad. Las palabras que más se repiten. Y vamos a la pregunta número 2. Seleccione una prioridad para que su país aborde su desafío principal.
The second question is select one priority for your country to address its main challenge. This is a multiple options question. Job creation, improving the business environment, improving transparency and accountability, efficient allocation and use of public resources, climate change mitigation and adaptation, and increasing the use of technology for efficiency. Efficient public resource allocation, job creation, and the third question is, in a maximum of 2 words, how do you or your institution support these priorities? Once again, transparency appears as one of the most important issues. Training, accountability.
Ok, muchísimas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we're going to start with the plenary number 1, regional challenges and opportunities. Over to you, Isam. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you. In this session, we will be addressing the opportunities throughout the region, but I will now switch to English. The session will be conducted in both English and Spanish. So if you have your headphones, use them for termination interpretation.
The imbalances created by COVID-19, including rising inflation pressures, global economic uncertainty, and higher debt. Even poverty and employment have returned to pre-pandemic levels. Despite varying level of economic recovery after the pandemic, economic growth is again lagging in relation to all other regions of the world. According to the World Bank, Latin America, and the Caribbean Economic Review, the region is projected growth is 2.6% in 2025, the lowest growth rate globally. The LAC region faces uncertainty because of the many political changes around the world, vulnerability of climate change, the rising tide of crime and violence, growing fiscal and debt management difficulties, lack of quality jobs, and depressed private and public investment. On the other hand, 2025 offers some great opportunity and that can help LAC countries prosper in these uncertain times. These opportunities are in the green economy, digital economy, fostering innovation, fiscal reordering, and structural reforms. The objective of this session is to explore LAC region challenges and priorities that can contribute to accelerate the region's sustainability and innovation. The panelist is Javier and Bill, and I'll introduce them now. They are representing the World Bank and IDB, and will present their views and approach to addressing the LAC region's challenges and priorities to include the following: economic growth, jobs, climate change, strengthening governance and service delivery, digital technology, improved public financial management, business environment, private sector and innovation, and potential for regional cooperation for catalyzing economic development. With this, I'm going to move to introduce our panelists. And I'm going to start with Javier Davila. Javier Davila is Chief of the Operations, Financial Management, and Procurement Services Office in the Inter-American Development Bank. He is responsible for the fiduciary oversight of more than 650 operations across the IDB's portfolio in 26 countries throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. The team led by Javier also promote the adoption of best practices in financial management and procurement within the country systems of IDB member countries. Prior to joining IDB, Javier held high-level position in Mexico's federal government in the financial, energy, and public procurement sector. He has combined his professional practice with academic work, having served as a faculty member of Tecnológico de Monterrey and other prestigious universities across Latin America. He is a frequent speaker at international forums and the author of several academic articles on procurement, econometrics, finance, and risk management. Javier Davila, holds a degree in economics and PhD in financial services. Our next panelist is William Maloney, also known as Bill Maloney. He is our chief economist at the World Bank for the Latin America region. He is a U.S. national. He joined the bank in 1998 as a senior economist for Latin America and the Caribbean region. He held various positions, including lead economist in the Office of the Chief Economist for Latin America, lead economist in the Development Economics Research Group, chief economist for trade and competitiveness, and global lead on innovation and productivity. He was most recently chief economist for Equitable Growth and Finance and Institution Vice Presidency. From 2011 to 2014, he was visiting professor at the University of the Andes and worked closely with the Colombian government on innovation and firm upgrading. Dr. Maloney received his PhD in economics from University of California, Berkeley, his BA from Harvard University in 1981, and studied at the University of the Andes in Bogota, Colombia, 1982-1983. His research activities and publication have focused on issues related to international trade and finance, developing country labor markets, and innovation and growth, including several flagship publications about Latin America and the Caribbean. So with this elaborate introduction for our distinguished guest, I'm gonna go straight into the question for each of them. So for Bill Maloney, we're gonna ask him in English, and he will respond in English and probably in some Spanish. And for Javier, we'll ask him in Spanish, and he will answer also in Spanish. So let me start with Bill. Bill, as we know, I mean, over the last few weeks, few months, few years, we have had a lot of changes in the world that's affecting economic growth and other aspects of relations around the world. Can you briefly share with us the state of the Latin America region, economic growth challenges, and the World Bank priority in supporting the region to accelerate economic growth? Por favor.
Muy buenos días a todos. Bom dia.
Good morning, everybody.
I will do mine in my native English. I wanted to talk a little bit about the innovations we need to get more growth and better performance out of our economies. And I want to start first talking about some good news, because there's both. The good news in our region is that from a point of view of macroeconomic management, which is the basis for everything we need to, the foundation on which everything else we try to do rests, we're in much better shape than we were 30 years ago. This is not your grandfather's, great-grandfather's Latin American economy, which was reputed for hyperinflations and extraordinary volatility. We have two crises under our belt right now, the financial crises and then the COVID crisis. And whereas in the past, we would say that the United States got a cold and Latin America gets pneumonia. In the last two, the world got pneumonia, we got pneumonia too, but it wasn't worse. In terms of fighting inflation, we've done extremely well. Right now, the region has inflation rates below the OECD level, and that's because the very professional central banks and ministries of finance realized early the challenge that faced the region. They understood their vulnerability to inflationary expectations and acted very early, much earlier than the advanced countries. I won't go into countercyclical monetary policy because it's too interesting, but suffice it to say that the markets recognize this professionalization of macro management and have rewarded our region for it. So that's good, and it's something we need to defend every day, because this idea of central banks and all is a battle that independent central banks is a battle we fight every day. There is potential for nearshoring, friendshoring. We don't really know where the international trade regime is going to come down, but I think there is still this potential. I would say that we had more potential before and we weren't exercising it. There's a lot of talk about firms moving from China to Mexico and into other parts of Latin America, and that was visible everywhere in the news except in the data, where in fact flows into Latin America were below 2010, and greenfield investment announcements were substantially below earlier years. So there are a lot of things we need to think about as a region about why we are less attractive to foreign direct investment, even in this current realignment of global value chains than we think we should be. Finally, we're also really well positioned in the green transition. We know right now our electricity grid is about 50% renewable and green. We have lots of renewables to develop. We have people working in green hydrogen. And of course, countries like Peru and Chile have a lot of lithium and other crucial minerals, which we can build on. And of course, in Brazil, we have tremendous, all around the Amazon, we have tremendous biodiversity. All these things give us grounds for new industries and new sources of dynamism. On the bad side, the bad news, which I think we can't ignore, is, first of all, there is a rise in increasing violence and organized crime. If you look just as a very crude measure, that of homicides, you see that we've got 9% of the global population and 30% of the world's homicides. We're about 10 times the homicide rate of Asia. And generally, firms will tell you, all of you I know work with firms, will tell you that insecurity is a major problem and a major drag on investment, much less so in other parts of the world. And I want to say this is also becoming an issue for the populations. This is just Google searches of the term organized crime in Argentina, Chile, and Ecuador, and you see people are concerned, people are interested. I don't want to go into this right now. It was the subject of our last semi-annual report, but there's a whole system of dealing with this that involves police forces, intelligence, cárceles, prisons, justice systems, and of course the whole social network that offers young people other alternatives than working in organized crime that we need to work on, but I won't go into it here. The second piece of bad news is we're growing at about 2.5% going forward. That's bad. And it's not just because of COVID or something like that. We've been growing at this rate for a long time. And with the increased uncertainty around the trade regime and continued low levels of competition among many industries in our region, and then finally, what I want to talk about is a very low level of innovation. We face major obstacles to raising that to a level of, say, 5%, which would really make a dent in poverty and social mobility. And the final thing I just want to mention is we have governments that are under stress. This is where a lot of you all come in as well. There's citizen dissatisfaction. 3 years ago, before organized crime was the top concern of the citizens, just the general lack of government responsiveness to citizen needs was the number one complaint of citizens. There's also, as we know, limited fiscal space. We all ran a lot of deficits during COVID, that was right. There were then attempts to roll back those and to raise new revenues, but nonetheless, most of our countries, with the exception of some countries like, for instance, Jamaica, has done tremendously well at bringing down its fiscal deficits and its debt. We remain in a high debt situation still, which is a problem. And finally, our governments have very limited implementation policies for the kinds of productivity policies that we would need to increase growth. Okay, so all of these require innovation in the private sector and in the public sector that I want to go through quickly. So first, I want to talk about building learning economies for growth. I mentioned all those great new areas in the green economy that we could move into. We also know that there's huge demand for China and the United States for ordinary things like copper and other raw materials. We haven't traditionally leveraged these well. And I just want to give you a quick historical example because I think history is useful. Oops. I wanted to flag this forthcoming volume which tries to locate our growth problem in a historical context of 100 years, which is, I think, how we have to look at it. And let me just give you some ancient history. So again, we continue to lag with growth everywhere else. And we can see that if you look at this figure to the left, that as a share of GDP per capita of the G7, of the advanced countries, Latin America has continued to decline over the last 40 years. And in fact, if you do this over a century, it's been stagnant or declining for 100 years. Meanwhile, you can see these miracle economies of East Asia, they're rapidly catching up. This is the nature of our problem. It's a long-term problem. Something of a crisis in the growth model. Even Chile, which is the good performer of all of our countries, in theory, hasn't been growing in terms of productivity, and that's making people question the growth model and a lot of more interest in industrial policies that were discredited in the past. You see Danny Roderick and Nobel Prize winner Joe Stiglitz pushing for programs of structural reform, getting us into more manufacturers or services and out of primary materials. You see Mariana Mazzucato talking about moonshots for the region. Where I want to start is with this query about why haven't we done better in the sectors that we're already in. So in the example I just want to use to fix the idea is in natural resources, and I'll start with a product that is very important to Peru, but I want to use a Chilean example, which is just the historical copper production in Chile. And you can see that in 1860, Chile was the largest copper producer in the world. But by basically 1910, the industry was dead. And then it picked up again. And the reason it picked up again was the infusion of new technologies by foreigners. At that point, Chile effectively turned over what had been a Chilean-run industry to the British and to the Americans. This happened all over Latin America. But it's also, what the point is, that it wasn't copper in itself that was ceasing to be a growth engine. It was the fact that we were unable to apply new technologies to our natural resources to leverage them fully. And so we see within the same country, the exact same product is giving very, very different growth impacts. And this is also true in different countries. The second largest exporter of copper in 1860 was Japan. Japan is not a manufacturing miracle. It is a natural resource-based miracle. And you can see this is like the father of copper. That's the copper king. There's also Masatomo Sumitomo was the father of copper in Japan. Where have you heard that name Sumitomo? Because there are 3 Japanese copper companies which you know well: Sumitomo, Hitachi, and Fujitsu. All of them mega conglomerates, all of them high tech. The question we have to ask ourselves as Latin Americans and Caribbeans is, where's our Hitachi? We've been in copper, we've been iron, we've been in gold, we've been in these things for 100 years, yet other countries have done much, much better with those raw materials. And going forward, we have to ask ourselves, as we get into lithium or into other sectors, how are we going to do it better this time? And I want to just argue that the reason that we didn't do better the first time through is because Latin America entered the Industrial Revolution unprepared. Here we have engineering density on the vertical axis and GDP per capita. You see Chile and Argentina were basically the same level of GDP per capita as Sweden and Denmark, but we had 20% of the engineers that these guys had. In fact, all of Latin America had very few engineers. If you look at literacy, it's the same problem. Basically, we entered the second industrial revolution unarmed. And we still are. This is R&D expenditures. We spend far less on R&D than other parts of the other countries of our level of development. And this raises the question of, okay, if we're not spending any money on innovation and on talent like that, are we going to do better with lithium than we did with copper? Will we be able to end this productivity slump that we see throughout the region? And will we be agile enough to negotiate the new challenges? I'm not going to go into this because it's too long, but this is how I view our innovation system, and it's a big issue that requires reforms on many fronts. I don't have time, but glad to talk about it later. The other thing I just wanted to stress was building responsive and effective states. We know that we need more fiscal space for stability, equity, and growth. We had that big increase in debt. We've got increased demand for transfers for equity purposes. We've got an underperforming education system. If you're a firm thinking about going to Latin America versus Vietnam, leaving China, and you look at, for instance, our PISA scores, our basic quality of education scores, Vietnam is far above the OECD average right now, and we are far below, okay? You add that with our high taxes and with our insecurity and our difficult infrastructure, we're not that attractive compared to a place like Vietnam. So we have a lot of things we need to do in terms of our education system, in terms of building infrastructure. And then in addition, we're getting older. We used to be this very young continent. We're not anymore. And that's going to flip over our dependency ratios. We're going to have our workers supporting many more viejitos than recently. This is a major challenge to our fiscal accounts all across the board that we need to deal with. But the second thing is that we're not that effective as states. Our Be Ready measures, which is replacing the doing business indicators of the World Bank, show that Latin American governments are actually quite poor in operationalizing programs. There's low tax morale. Many folks don't feel that their taxes are going where they're supposed to be going. We have this thing, what we've published, it's a mamotreto enorme de como 1,000 pages on the Government Analytics Handbook that looks at how we can measure better government performance and the kinds of interventions we can make. And basically it shows that there are big gains from improving the quality of governance through these kinds of scientific measures of government performance. And these are necessary for any productivity projects that our governments might want to entertain, any kind of industrial policies that we think we should be doing. If we don't have governments that can implement them, you can forget it. But the good news here is that Latin America has precisely been collecting information in a lot of different areas of tax ministries and procurement. We have databases that allow us to evaluate the performance of our government agencies and to improve on them. The material is all there. All we have to do is take advantage of its presence. And so we put out this little volume, which is data for better governance, building government analytics ecosystems in Latin America and the Caribbean, which is going to involve folks like you. And the idea is how to use this information better. And again, I don't want to go through this, but we have this idea of building a government analytics ecosystem in each country that would, on the right-hand side here, build individual and organizational capacities for analytics, and on the left-hand side, ensuring the quality of our data and the accessibility of the data so that everybody can use it and say, hey, we can improve here, we can improve there, because the possible gains are enormous. Then moving up, how do you just, who uses, what kinds of analytics are there? Descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and then who uses it with its various different agents. But the whole goal at the end of the end of the day is to improve monitoring and accountability, improve government transparency, improve policy evaluation, and effectively improve public service delivery, improve fiscal sustainability, and improve the trust in our public institutions. So we think this agenda is a very important one. We've been working on for 10 years. We have a fellowship program bringing people from all over the region that we hope you all will continue to participate in. I think this is one area we need to push on. At the same time, we push on getting the private sector to invest more in innovation and to build out our innovation systems. So I'll quit here. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Gracias a todos. And enjoy your conference.
Thank you, Bill. Very interesting potential and very interesting challenges for our LAC countries. So let me move to Javier. Javier, en español, entonces, ¿cuáles son las prioridades?
What are, Javier, the strategic priorities of the Inter-American Development to support Latin America and the Caribbean region to address the main challenges faced by our region? Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Transcendental CReCER 12th edition at to address the issue of regional priorities and challenges. I would like to first talk about 4 issues in the new IDB. 4 main challenges to address the main regions in concerning sustainability, resiliency, financial management, and procurement as a fundamental aspects to address the challenge, banks and the government, and the importance of the digital agenda for LAC countries. We're going to start with the critical challenges in Latin America and the Caribbean. As Bill already said, after the pandemic, Latin American economies are going back to their growth paths. The GDP is going back to a reasonable level. Last year, average GDP grew 2.4% above initial estimates. There are other favorable indicators, macroeconomic indicators. Inflation rates has gone back to pre-COVID levels, which demonstrate an effective economic policy management in LAC countries. Governments have been very proactive, and they have strengthened their macroeconomic policies. Central banks have also acted responsibly and have moved the interest rate appropriately to counter inflation, and the job market has responded positively. However, despite the progress in the regions, the governments, there are persistent significant challenges. Inflation is still above the inflation rate fixed by several countries. Fiscal uncertainty prevails, and there are still geopolitical external risks, commercial trade tensions among regions, and uncertainty about interest rates globally. These are repeated challenges we must face together, and there is also increased social demands, so that the biggest challenges in Latin American and Caribbean countries are the increase in productivity, socioeconomic conflicts, and the interest in preserving macroeconomic stability. All these things are important, and I guess to summarize what I summarized in the prior slide, Latin America and the Caribbean has its most important challenges: increased social demands, budget shortages, and low economic growth. However, there are regional opportunities to create innovative solutions. We will be talking a lot about this to face the global challenges we face. And aware of these challenges, IDB has engaged in a significant transformation in this model to support Latin America and the Caribbean, while strengthening its role as a bridge between the region and the rest of the world. An important fact as part of this transformation has been the recent launch of IDB Pact Plus, the new bank's initiative to focus on the bank's 3 areas: sovereign, guaranteed, bid invest, and bid lab, with IDB Lab, IDB and IDB Invest to scale up its impact through the projects we finance throughout the region. The new bank strategy that is summarized in this diagram is founded on 3 essential objectives: poverty and inequality reduction, to face climate change issues, and to foster sustainable economic growth. This institutional strategy is structured around these objectives, but also includes 7 action areas, and includes 5-point focus points for the bank to support the region: impact orientation, strategic selectivity, the design of new tools for research mobilizations, knowledge and synergy with the private sector. To capitalize on all these opportunities and accomplish its objective, IDB has addressed SS7 operational areas that are shown in the following transparency. 3 are cross-cutting. Those are biodiversity, gender equality, and institutional capacity and the rule of law, and 4 areas that are focused on specific development areas: social protection and human capital development, productive development and innovation, infrastructure, the building of new sustainable resilient infrastructure, and regional integration. That's also particularly important. And now let's move to the next issue, that's sustainability and resilience. In the next transparency, we see that to address climate change and environmental degradation, we have identified 3 pillars. In the first place, to promote mitigation. Secondly, to spur adaptation to climate change. And thirdly, to advance cross-cutting measures, including active participation of the social, of the private sector. To drive this work program, it is essential. It is critical to say that we need to involve both the government and industry, because both are decisive factors in accomplishing the objectives that we have jointly identified. But how do we identify financing, green financing? That's what we call it at the bank. How do we distribute a green financing across sectors? About 30% of resources for this objective are destined to water and marine resources. A similar amount goes to environmental governance projects. Between 15 and 16% go to resilience and disaster management. A similar amount, 14%, goes to biodiversity topics, and the remaining 10% is devoted to circular economy, pollution prevention and control, and the protection of environmental goods and services.
¿Y cómo lo hacemos? Lo hacemos a través de un...
We do this through a means of financial instruments, including traditional investment loans, also investment grants and technical cooperation. And we also create numerous knowledge products, mainly training programs in issues concerning climate change, and a significant number of technical notes that address the issues like climate resilience and adaptation measures, innovation instruments, and guidelines for implementing climate resilient health challenges. More specifically, when it comes to financial management and sustainable public procurement, the bank has taken advantage of the vast network of regional global initiatives in regards of auditing and accounting. We cooperate with Intersay, Brazil's TCU. We also support sustainability events for OLICEFs and CReCER, and we also work closely to create financial sustainable information in the public sector. And now let's turn our attention to public procurement. To take advantage of the potential of this sector of a public procurement, to make it a key component of the efforts to build sustainable consumption procurement efforts. Let us say that in the last decade, Latin American and Caribbean countries have made significant efforts to consolidate a sustainable public procurement agenda. Almost all countries have a legal framework for implementing this effort, and they have also created a great number of legal tools. And in this area, the bank has focused in fostering, in creating, developing theoretical and practical tools, but also building capacity and sharing knowledge like, for instance, the Inter-American Public Procurement Network, with whom we have prepared a significant amount of materials, tools, studies, guidelines, model regulations, and other tools that allow us to make better use of the potential of a public procurement. And when it comes to training and advice, we work together with the OAS, that is the network's technical secretariat, but we also provide directly support to the member countries to prepare sustainability criteria, introduce sustainability criteria in procurement regulations, as well as in specific projects concerning this matter. Now let us move to the last and fourth topic. Although in other fora we have talked about the importance of digital transformation and its importance to foster public policies among the various governments, I would like to now highlight what are the keys to success in implementing these agendas in our countries. There are four elements comprised here. One, governance and institutionality, the regulatory framework that has gradually evolved, but slowly but steadily, a digital talent, of course, and last but not least, the importance of a digital infrastructure and tools. The digital agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean is supported by the bank through knowledge products, training, technical assistance, regional policy dialogue, and non-reimbursable financing. We have done a lot of progress as shown in this chart, but there much remains to be done. The red boxes show what still remains to be done, including among Latin American countries and the Latin American 10 countries do not have a digital agenda. Over 18 countries, that's over half of Latin American countries, do not have an interoperable platform. 14 countries do not have data protection laws. Most, 20 countries, do not have a digital identity, and only a third of government procedures can be initiated online. However, to foster this important and necessary transformation, the bank is presently financing 64 loan operations in 21 countries for a total $3.53 billion to decisively support the region's digital transformation. In regards to cybersecurity, the challenges include the fact that 15 countries do not have a cybersecurity agenda, 23 lack a critical infrastructure protection plan, 11 countries throughout the region lack an IT emergency response equipment plan. 22 countries do not have an institution that is charged with cybersecurity. 20 countries lack a digital identity, as I mentioned already. And also in this regard, the bank is presently financing, as shown in this map, 24 projects in 18 countries addressing cybersecurity issues. The last part of my presentation refers to electronic government procurement. We have supported adopting and developing EGP platforms, but we also evaluate the existing platforms and foster using them in bank operations. And to conclude, I would like to mention the important contribution from the private sector in regards of the digital transformation and agenda. Thanks to their technical knowledge and their participation and assistance in preparing regulations and standards through the joint investments with government sector and the continuity of digital policies and the creation of data and knowledge are critical to further drive this issue throughout the region. And to conclude, I would like to mention a quote from Ilan Golfin, our chairman, that summarizes what I have tried to explain in these 15 minutes. Our region faces a triple structural challenge of growing social demands, scarce fiscal resources, and low growth, with the significant additional effects of climate change. But at the same time, there is a great opportunity for the region to become part of the solution to shared global challenges. This could be a turning point not only for the IDB group, but also for the entire region. Thank you. Thank you, Javier. We have now reviewed the challenges and opportunities.
Get some more into the details. So let me start with Bill. Bill, the World Bank Job Quality Index reveals a troubling trend in Latin America. Since 2016, LAC countries have seen minimal to no improvement in job quality, encompassing labor earning, benefits, satisfaction, and security. This stagnation is particularly alarming given the surge of young people entering the workforce. How is the World Bank supporting the region not only in reversing this trend, but in building a labor market that prioritizes sustainable job creation? Bill.
Thanks for the question. I think that the slow pace of let's say, good job creation is directly linked to what I was talking about with our low rate of growth. If you're going to grow at 2 to 2.5% over decades, you're not experiencing the kind of productivity growth that's necessary to generate jobs that can pay higher earnings or develop an overall package of characteristics that are attractive to workers. And so for me, we have to start with the issue just of why we're not growing. That's why I focus there. Now, on the other hand, it's true that roughly 22% of firms in Latin America report that they can't expand por falta de mano de obra calificada, because they can't get the workers they need. There's always a little bit of a question of interpreting this, meaning at the wage I'm willing to pay, I can't get the workers. That we find everywhere. But nonetheless, that number, 22%, is comparable in Asia to 12%. And again, this reflects that we have a problem of capacitation of workers. And it begins with the primary and the secondary education, which I said are woefully inadequate to meet a modern economy, to meet the challenges of the new technologies. Again, just quickly going back to history, when Germany was making its great universities, it started with its primary and secondary education system because that's where your pipeline is. If you've got 10% literacy or 20% literacy, you cannot get the kind of really good students you want in your universities or really good entrepreneurs. So this is a key thing both to the creation of jobs, but also to filling those jobs that might emerge with greater growth. The second thing that's a little bit tricky is we often say we've got these huge informal sectors in Latin America, and that is part of the cause of low growth or low productivity. And I guess I see that as the tail wagging the dog. I think what we frequently see, if you talk to workers in Mexico or Brazil or Dominican Republic, is that a worker in a changarro, in a little micro firm, will tell you that they're happy there compared to the job they could get in the formal sector, okay? That's to say, I could be doing dishes in a restaurant for very little money and badly designed labor market protections, or I could be running my own little changarro and washing dishes and cooking the same. That kind of porousness between the formal sector and self-employment is very common in Latin America, and that's this assumption that this 50% of workers that we find there are somehow in worse jobs or somehow unhappily, let me rephrase that, unhappily forced into those jobs is just not consistent with the data. The problem is the jobs that are being created in the formal sector are low productivity jobs, and the problem is that our social protection systems provide incentives to be informal in many cases. Just an example, we know, and then I will stop taking up all the oxygen, we know that in all our countries there's this tremendous ping-ponging back and forth between formal salary jobs and informal jobs. It's clear in the data of all kinds, right? All right, in most of our countries, you need to contribute for a certain number of years to get a pension. That's to say that most of our low-skilled workers, basic education, are never gonna get a pension. So they see all these contributions that you have to do in the formal sector as a tax, all right? You can go through our labor market codes and our social protection systems and find all of these disincentives to work in the formal sector. Similarly, it's great to think about extending social protection systems in a popular form to be universal. Yes, we want to reach everybody, but we also have to keep in mind that the minute you do that, that means that I can open my little changarro, my little firm, and not have to worry about not having health insurance because now I can get it. We need to think in an integral way about the pull and push factors that we create as governments that force people in or out of informality. I'll leave it there. But no, my final message, growth. That's it. We have to work on that.
So growth is the world, basically, but to get there, I think Bill has mentioned a couple of things, education and skills, and probably thinking in a different way about social protection system that Latin America has had until now. Javier, let me turn to you. You have talked about the strategy of IDB. Ha hablado de la estrategia del BID.
You have talked about the 7+ pillars, the bank's IDB strategy. How are you implementing the IDB Plus strategy, and how are you fostering cooperation between the development partners and key actors to accomplish a key change in Latin America and the Caribbean governments in an uncertain world where resources are increasingly scarce? Thank you. Indeed, the IDB, since the approval of its institutional strategy, has been working decisively in several secondary reforms that have to do with the bank's restructuring and important reforms that the bank has undertaken to improve the effectiveness of its projects, and with a results focus and the scaled impact we look for throughout the region. In regards with our connection with other development partners, I think there's been a significant improvements in terms of cooperation and synergies since end 2023. Various multilaterals set up a group to align it with the priorities of G20 to promote sustainable and inclusive growth. In this action framework, we have filled a significant role with our work as the first vice presidency in these relationships with G20, and we prepared an agenda that was built on 3 major pillars. to work together as a system to create a national and co-financing platforms to have a greater scaled impact in becoming larger development banks to leverage the support we provide to countries. We expect as multilaterals to create additional loans of up to 400 billion over the next decade, and our third pillar aims at our sharpening our collective focus on the impact of our work and prioritizing tangible results and prioritizing results of our usual work. And this has allowed us to expand the bank's financing capacities, but also to drive forward an agenda to promote climate action and promote co-financing, foster participation of the private sector, and improve, as I said earlier, efficiency and impact in the various areas of our development work. More specifically, we carry out joint multilateral work to we have assigned several MOUs between the bank and the World Bank to foster a development agenda that was assigned at the end of the year before last and last year again, and the various accords among the two organizations to harmonize not just their policies but also our practices in regards of financial management and procurement. We have already more specifically entered several mutual reliance agreements so that we can provide a standard framework to our clients so that we will not require unnecessary conditions in, when they work with these two organizations, like if it were a single organization, and thereby increase our efficiency. And also the cooperation will not be limited to multilaterals, to other specific organizations. We are working closely with Mosaic and IFAC. We cooperate with INTESAI, and obviously with the networks that we have already mentioned, the COTEGAL, the accountants organization, and the organizations, the higher control and follow-up organizations like INTESAI and other Inter-American control organizations. And to conclude, I think that we are in a moment of outstanding collaboration between multilateral organizations in the pursuit of the region's development. Thanks very much, Javier, because this cooperation between IDB, World Bank, and other multilateral and bilateral organizations, collaboration is critical as well as among countries. Let us now move to another topic that concerns technology, and I would like to ask Bill and Javier to answer more kind of briefly so that we can fulfill our agenda. Javier, you talked about the digital transformation. How has the IDB been fundamental in supporting this transformation in the public sector in LAC countries? How is IDB using technology to better help its clients and specifically governments to build sound digital governance frameworks that improve transparency and accountability in the quickly evolving digital scenario? We do this in three ways: by supporting and financing specific projects, as I showed in my initial slides, and also by fostering through our networks specialized networks of accountants, auditors, and procurement specialists to foster better standards and to support countries to implement those reforms. And the third way is internally in home through our relationship with countries to change our operative and processes cycle so that teams can provide a tangible results and digital excellence to our clients. We have a very ambitious digital transformation program that is built on three principles: to provide excellence to our clients, to provide the digital foundations to improve the relationship between the bank and the countries, and to foster a digital culture. This is so important for us that we have set up a new vice presidency at a bank since this year to address the digital transformation efforts. We already have in place a communication portal with all our clients that aims at managing all sorts of interactions digitally with all countries, and not only that, but also to conduct all bank disbursements digitally, so that this process will be increasingly effective and efficient, without forgetting all other initiatives, including state-of-the-art technologies like artificial intelligence for audited financial statements and other control and auditing systems available at the bank. Thank you very much, Javier. This has been particularly important for young Latin American and Caribbean people. Now,
institution. Now, given the World Bank global perspective, what do you think Latin American countries can do to improve governance and trust in government institution? And if you can give us some example also that you have mentioned before about technology, digital, and innovation.
Trust comes from actions, obviously, and improving the responsiveness of government in many different dimensions is the key to increasing trust. So also, we know that there are many, many leakages from our fiscal accounts. Many projects overrun or never get done, and all of this leads to a lack of faith in what our governments are doing. There are things that can be done that are quick wins. There are many things that can be done, just including in things like digital technology. I will tell you that in my country, one of my happiest days was when I did not have to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles to renew my license. I did it online from Bogota, Colombia, and they sent it there in 3 weeks. That would have been inconceivable 10 years earlier. I would have had to go be abused by some very bored bureaucrat, blah, 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 blah. It would have taken me 2 or 3 times. No. That's not hard. That's not politically charged or difficult. We're not, those kinds of things which we can do with digital technology in many different ways are quick wins. There are other things, speaking of the digital thing, the infrastructure is key. That's right, and we're actually not doing badly with that in Latin America. But it's also something we often don't link, which we now have the capability for, the different databases from the different ministries in the government. So it's, at present still hard to cross-check, whether this person is really paying their taxes, which we could easily verify if we just linked it over here to this other database, right? Things like that can be done, and eventually, you signal. It was very important in Spain about 25 years ago. There was one big empresario who went to jail for tax evasion. And it signaled to the entire country that, no, we are serious about collecting taxes in a fair way, Just increasing transparency through having systems where it's easy for governments, for the populace to monitor, is incredibly important as well. I think anybody from Jamaica here? Yeah, okay. Jamaica, Jamaica had a debt level of like 160, 170% of GDP, and they brought it down to something like 80% right now. The only way this could be done was through what they call epochs. Is that what it's called? Yeah, epochs. I forget the exact name, but basically, these were groups of different citizens in the economy, the private sector, public sector, government, that brought everybody together and made sure that this process of debt reduction was fair and transparent, and that government resources were going where they were supposed to go. This is a huge example of how building transparency more through all these different, it could be through digital technologies, it could just be from getting the right sort of agencies like Epoch, is critical to building that kind of confidence so then you can move forward in other projects. It's been done before. If you ever watched the movie Lincoln, which is a very good movie, just the way Lincoln got the 14th and 13th Amendments through, incredibly corrupt, giving people post offices here and buying off this guy there. Okay, the United States didn't start off with it had to evolve over time with these kinds of medidas, and I think we can do that too.
Yes, you can, and yes, we can. So let me we're coming to the end, so each one has 30 seconds. Cada uno tiene 30 segundos.
Each one of you would have 30 seconds to give us.
Attending the conference on how they can implement the strategic priority discussed today. So, en español, por favor, empezamos con Javier, 30 segundos.
Javier will have 30 seconds, and then David. Okay, my call to action to this group would be to be prepared for change. We have, I think, all the tools, an important agenda, a path towards sustainability and innovation and the use of technology. But not only that, but also innovation generally. So the call is to pay attention to these changes. One of the objectives of this conference is to share experiences and be attentive to the evolution of these challenges and also the solutions to these challenges, and to be prepared to address them quickly, and also to be prepared so that if we eventually make a mistake, we can solve that quickly and to continue implementing these efforts for transformation. And certainly this conference should provide a space to continue encouraging this spirit. Thank you very much, Javier.
I just think we have to take the challenge of growth in this next wave of arriving technologies much more seriously as nations than we are so far. The transformations that are going to come are going to require levels of skills on the part of our workforce, levels so that's going to require, again, the education system, our training systems need to be aligned with the private sector, and we need to be getting our entrepreneurs up to speed, out in the world learning about everything AI is going to be doing, everything that new technologies can and cannot do, and how they're going to affect us. And we have to build our national innovation systems to respond. When we look at the Asian miracles, it wasn't that they did industrial policies, which they did. It was precisely this building of a base of learning so that they could learn about new technologies, bring them to the local countries, and get to the frontier fast. I think this priority of getting to the technological frontier needs to be in our DNA. Thanks.
Thank you, Javier. Thank you, Bill. Just let me say one thing that to conclude this session, basically we have heard from Bill on growth, productivity, innovation. I'm not going to summarize everything else that he has said, neither with Javier, who has talked a lot about collaboration, about the issue of helping the countries, but also collaboration within countries. But what we have seen also that while there are a lot of challenges, the potential is huge for Latin America, and especially when it comes, to the mining sector, the digital economy, and also the issue of improving the government performance, so the ciudadanos can have a better trust in their government. So there are a lot of jóvenes, young people that are waiting basically to enter the job market in Latin America. I think these type of potential, if worked well, can really transform Latin America in a big way, and the integration probably across Latin America can help in doing that. And this meeting here, or this conference, will offer a great potential also for all of you to be able to collaborate among each other. Let me end by really thanking our distinguished guests, Bill Maloney and Javier, in taking their times to share with us all these very important lessons learned, but also strategy, and in addition to the potential and challenges that we have in Latin America. Thank you very much. A big applause for them, please.
Gracias, Isam, Javier, Bill.
Thanks, Isam, Javier, Bill. Now we're going to break for 15 minutes. Please, we will resume at 10:15. Thank you very much. 11:15.